the bill basically creates an asylum corps. Okay, it creates a bunch of, thousands of bureaucrats, basically agents, asylum agents, that would be empowered right at the border to either allow people into the country with an immediate work permit. Today they got to wait 6 months. You give them an immediate work permit, you're going to have more people coming. That's a huge magnet. Or they have the power to immediately release them and grant them asylum, which now puts them on a 5-year path to citizenship, which is what a lot of Democrats want. They want to turn a bunch of illegal immigrants into citizens, into voters, in the hopes that those people will then turn around and vote for them in future elections, grateful because they'll know who let them in. That's a huge problem. That doesn't solve the border. It makes it worse.
This doesn't provide a path to citizenship for any of these people, just to clarify. But it raises...
Yes, it does. Absolutely it does. No, yes, it does. When you have asylum, you are on a path to citizenship. When you get asylum, you are a year away from a green card and 4 years away from citizenship. Absolutely, it does.
But you said you approved of the asylum
have the power to grant you asylum, not even a judge, a bureaucrat.
This is some of this I guess these poison pills that are in this bill, this Ukraine supplemental, the spending bill, more taxpayer dollars being sent to Ukraine, unaccountable. I don't even know what happened to the last billions that we sent over there. Welcome back to the program. Dana Loesch here with you. Bottom of this third hour. You can listen coast to coast terrestrially in one of our markets. You can stream it. Watch the simulcast, the video component as well. YouTube, Facebook, Channel 347, DirecTV. That's Senator Marco Rubio on CNN blasting out the warning for that, what's included in this bill. But then also there's this thing which I've been reading as well, and I'm trying to find, I wanted to read the language in the bill because I saw this from Senator Rand Paul about with this Ukraine supplemental. Apparently, the other big bomb that's in this is this impeachment clause, an impeachment clause in this. So essentially, if you don't agree to continue to fund Ukraine, you could be impeached. This is wild. Senator Rand Paul was literally on the Senate floor just a few minutes ago. He joins us by phone now. Senator from Kentucky. Senator Paul, thank you so much for joining us and for raising awareness on this, because, you guys get this, you guys see the language on this, obviously way faster than we do. And I appreciate you warning us about this, because who knows what else is in this bill now. Will you please tell those listening and those watching what this is about? What is this impeachment clause that's buried in this supplemental?
Well, last week I was sort of joking and I said, well, they impeached Trump during his presidency. They impeached him when he was already not president. The next thing they'll do is impeach him before he becomes president. I was joking. And then J.D. Vance found this and this is one good thing of having allies up here. He and his staff found this. The funding goes on into the next presidency. So it's not just funding for 2024. It's going to be for 2025 and 2026. And it puts penalties in there for changing the funding. So they're already covering their you-know-what in case Trump is elected. But realize this is the problem they impeached him for the last time. He said that he wanted conditions. He said there was corruption in Ukraine. I think the Biden family was involved in it. And I want an investigation of that. And I want to make the aid contingent on this condition. And it's funny, the whole media went crazy saying quid pro quo. And it's like, well, aid is supposed to be conditioned. To me, it was always something that you should do. It was maybe a little different because it was a political opponent, but it really was about corruption. And should they have had an investigation? Should aid be contingent on it? Yes. But now what it sets it up for is if President Trump is reelected or elected again, and he decides that he doesn't want to keep sending this aid and tries to stop it, they're setting him up basically for grounds to try to impeach him. Again, it's bizarre, but that this fact that this appropriation is going to go over several years could actually be used to impeach Trump if he tries to stop it.
This is wild. We're talking to Senator Rand Paul, who joins us on the phone. This is wild to me. So, and as you mentioned, here they went after him the first time because he wanted to, and it was really just a moratorium, a temporary moratorium, just to figure out where our taxpayer dollars was going, where it was going, and to look into, what was the level of corruption here. So they penalized him because he was trying to be accountable for taxpayer dollars and then look into the corruption with the Biden family on this. And now they have these penalties baked into this. Again, I've never heard, is it unusual to have a penalty like this for a potential incoming president if they don't continue funding, that unaccountable funding for a different sovereign nation like this?
There's no way it's accidental. This language is put in there on purpose. They probably couldn't shovel all the money out quick enough, and they wanted to do it over an extended period of time. And they thought, oh, my goodness, we have an incompetent president that's not been even deemed able to submit to a legal trial because of his level of incompetency. He might lose. We might get Trump again, and we want to make sure this money goes out. But realize this doesn't happen with just Chuck Schumer. This is Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell joined at the hip, all supporting Biden. And this is McConnell with a small minority, at least in the beginning. 32 of us said no. We think we ought to address our own border first before we start giving money to other countries. And there was about 15, maybe 17 in the beginning. So basically, we had almost twice as many Republicans wanting to defend the border first, but Mitch McConnell wanted the money to go to Ukraine first. Didn't care about the border. They put up a border control bill that, as Marco Rubio just said on your program, and others have said, was a ruse. It wasn't any good. It actually, I think, was worse than the existing law. Probably one of the worst bills ever negotiated. But it was done really with McConnell's guidance because he doesn't really care about the border. He just cares about getting the money to Ukraine.
And with how does Senator McConnell retain leadership? And when that fight comes up, is there a plan to replace him? And who would step into that? Who would step into that gap?
I think it's unknown. You have to realize it's a real small group of people. Unfortunately, only 49 of us. It's never a lot. If we win a couple of elections to get the majority, we could be at 52 or 53. But a lot of them, the ones you've probably never heard of, are dependent on McConnell for money. They don't raise their own money. They're not that well known in their own states, and they depend on him to get reelected. And that dependency on the big corporate money, and his money comes, his money doesn't come in $1,000 increments. His money comes in $1 million increments. So it's hugely wealthy corporations that give to Mitch McConnell's super PAC. And then that money gets funneled to members who vote for him, basically. And he's not averse to reminding the membership how much he's given them. It's not uncommon for him to tell each member in front of everybody else how much he's contributed to their campaign.
So it's sad because it sounds like he's got, obviously an ironclad grip on the direction of the Senate, and without any attention being given to the border. I'm just fascinated as to not just his. I mean, the Democrats I can kind of understand, but for someone who identifies as a Republican, Mitch McConnell, to make Ukraine funding their domestic issues more so than ours. I mean, I just had a story talking about how it's almost tripled the illegal crossings from the northern border coming into Canada, more mileage, even less staffed than what we have at the southern border, and even fewer legal ports of entry. I mean, this is, on two different fronts now, and no concern from Senate leadership from Mitch McConnell.
His grip isn't as ironclad as you might think. I mean, it's more and more tenuous. There's more and more discontent. There's more and more dissent. There's much more public opposition. And a lot of times these have been private internal battles. But, we had one election fight, but still, Rick Scott got only maybe 25% of the votes. But the caucus is changing, and I can tell you that his handling of this has made people who might have been in the middle and didn't vote against him last time, I think, more open to thinking about it the next time around, because basically he's going against what I don't meet anybody. I go to Republican conservative events. I go to Lincoln Day dinners in my state. I meet people on the street. I don't meet one of my voters who comes up and says, oh, I'm so glad that you're not going to waste any money stopping illegal immigration on our border and that it's going to Ukraine. Oh, I'm so thankful you're doing that. No, they're horrified by it. And even the ones who might be willing to send some money overseas say, do it after you fix our border, sir. Please fix our border. Don't let 785,000 people come in 2 months and do nothing and, completely capitulate and then send the money overseas. They capitulated. The border bill wasn't any good, but we could have stuck together. If 41 of us would have stuck together and opposed this aid, we have enormous leverage because the Democrats want to send this money more than the Republicans do. We could have held them up and said, instead of $5,000 a day, we're just going to acknowledge the emergency already exists. Instead of waiting to $5,000 to get to an emergency, the emergency is what happened over the last 2 months. We're going to start with one, and this will be an emergency, but we're not going to stop just people between the ports of entry. We're going to stop everyone for a while. We're going to have a timeout, and we're not going to let any migrants in. We still have a lawful immigration. We still take 1 million. We take 1 million people a year, and I'm not opposed to that. I'm fine with legal immigration, employment-based immigration, checking on people, making sure you know who they are. but I'm against unlawful mass migration.
Right, right. We're talking with Senator Rand Paul out of Kentucky. Last question for you, Senator. Going back to this supplemental, I was just looking at some of the notes here that Vance's office had put out as well. 1.6 billion foreign military financing in Ukraine, 13.7 billion for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. The funds allocated expire September 30th, 2025, and that would be a year into, if Trump wins in 2024 this November, that would be a year into his second term. Is there kind of a two-part question? Number one, is this bill, I mean, I feel like this bill with this in here is going to pass the Senate because it's so close. The margin of error and margin of victory that you have in the Senate is so close because of, the seats, a balance of power. But is there any way, if something like this were to pass, can you sort of mitigate the effects of this after the fact? I don't even know how that would be done, but, I'm curious.
Everybody listening to this program needs to write Speaker Mike Johnson and say, stick to your guns and don't bring this monstrosity up. This pays for welfare in Ukraine. It pays for government salaries in Ukraine. It pays for small business loans. Ladies' handbag shop was getting small business loans from us.
Wow.
So this is a terrible bill, and it can be stopped. It's going to pass the Senate because Senator McConnell cares more about Ukraine than he does our border, but it will not pass in the House if it's not brought up. And Johnson has the ability not to bring it up. And the problem is many of his pronouncements have been good, only to be folded or changed later on. He passed Israel aid paid for, but now he's gone back on that and tried to pass it unpaid for. And I think he wasn't successful. But the thing is he needs to stick by his guns on this. He has all the leverage in the world, and he could do what McConnell refused to do over here, and he could force them to take border security. If they want this, he should look them in the eye, say, real border security, which is like House Bill 2 or nothing.
Wow.
And stare them down.
And I really hope he does. I hope he sticks to his guns. A lot of people have been kind of wondering about how much political capital he has. And I know that the last time around with that immigration bill, it didn't go so great for Republicans in the House. So we're going to see this time. But we're grateful to you, Senator Paul, for bringing this up to everybody's attention as well. And I hope to talk with you again soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.